Hi, I'm CJ and this is my RC channel. Okay, now it is time to put on our shock towers. And remember when I didn't put these on tight? That is good because that's exactly what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to leave those loose. And now we put these on, and these also we leave loose, and then we're going to tighten all 16 screws in a specific order. Okay, now before I spin this around, I'll do all of those. So, finish tightening in this order. So, bulkhead screws fully tighten, shock tower screws fully tighten. That's interesting. They showed doing the front bulkhead first, shock towers number 2. Oh, they just 1 and 2. Okay, so bulkhead first. Really wish I had that tool. Okay, let's now move on to page 14. And this is the T-bracket. And I'm not going to need those 2 spacers that go underneath, because there's the center is taller and you have room for 2 spacers underneath. Now, I'm going to be using that little trick that the pro drivers are using that is not shown in here. You can run without a brace, soft to medium with the brace, but there's no hole. Let me see. I mean, there's no bolt in there. Let me see if they mention a grub screw. No, they don't say anything about it. Okay. No problem. So, interesting. There's this T-brace has all kinds of options. Not having it at all, having 2 screws from below, which is what I'm going to do, plus a grub screw, 3 screws, 5 screws, excuse me, or multiple screws, like all of these, that one, and then using a 3x5 and a spacer to connect the motor mount to the T-brace to make it extra stiff if you connect all the screws and use this. I really hope someday someone sets up a carpet track in my area. That would be great. But for now, what I'm going to do is use 2 screws and a grub screw. And you know what? For this, I'm going to go ahead and use steel. I'm going to save the titanium for other places, because I may decide to take that off altogether. So now we have that, and it's not connected here. What I need is a small grub screw. So what I'm going to do is, they say to take a small grub screw and make sure you use a decent amount of Loctite on it. And where that center screw would be at the top of the T, put in the grub screw and you screw it down enough that it's not passing through. In other words, it's not sticking below the chassis. It's not going to like catch on something, particularly carpet, if you were running this on carpet. But they recommend this setup very highly for almost all but the highest traction conditions, in which case you would screw it down. So once that Loctite dries, that will be set in position. So it is time to move on to suspension arms, bag 3. Here is bag 3. Now I am not using any of these screws, and I'm not using those little shims. All of those were that's a good bit of weight when you consider this has all been replaced with titanium, and that weight has been cut down to less than half. It really adds up. You know, when you're working with 2 or 3 screws in your hand, it's like, oh, this isn't a big deal. You know, titanium isn't worth it. And then when you have a handful of that hardware, and that's not even half of what's already been used, and then you're like, wow, that is going to cut some weight. Now we are definitely not going to use all of those pills, so it's a good thing I have already started a parts box for my T4. I always do name and such on one side and top. That way it's like when I stick stuff on the shelf, it's easy to see which box is which. I'm going to go ahead and pause up and trim all these pieces. Okay, I'm going with a setup that sounds like it's going to work well for the conditions I'm going to be doing this is for the rear arms, the rear swing arms, getting the front and rear kingpins adjusted. And what this is going to do is generate as much downforce onto the tires as possible. It's adjusting the roll center, but it's staggering it front to rear, so more in the rear than in the front. That's why I'm using 0.5s in the front with this configuration. So inboard toe out in the front. So an extra degree turned out, or half a degree of toe out in the front, but inboard. And a 0.5 millimeter up at both sides. So it's raising the swing arms in relation to the chassis and in relation to the axles. And again, that's going to create some downward pressure under power. In the rear, even more so, going with full millimeter instead of a half millimeter. And that is all that's being done there. There's no change in inboard camber like there is in the front, but there's a higher level of downforce to the rear, a larger change in roll center. That's why I said it was staggered. It's, 1 in the rear, 0.5 in the front. And this is a configuration recommended by the Xray drivers for asphalt and even potentially some carpet conditions, but this is one of the main ways that they rig up, is having that stagger and having a little extra toe out in the front, leaving the rear standard. So when you're running no change to the inboard toe out in the rear, you're really running at 3 degrees, because 3 degrees is built in at 0. So when you're running no out, but when the little dot above the 1 here, if that's in the center, not either to one corner, then that means that there's no change. It's centered. So if we're centered in the front of the rear and centered in the rear of the rear, then the kingpin is going to be in the same position as stock, centered, and that means that there's no change in toe, inboard toe, not versus outboard toe, and there's a difference there, and that, there's so much going on here. It's it's hard to keep it straight. So anyway, those are the numbers I'm going to run to start and see where it goes, and modify from there or make adjustments from there. So we have our front FF, that's the forwardmost of the 2 front pieces, and then we have our front rear. Now that is going to face rearward. The text faces out the back, and this cutaway here is to allow the belt to run through this this space here. So that's going to go right there. So let's start by doing our arms. We need 2 of these 4x8 droop screws for our rear arms. Our rear arms are the ones with the 2 ball connectors built into them, and we have a left and a right, like that. The L and the R are on the underside, so that helps you with your orientation. And these are our grub screws, are our droop screws, and we are going to put these in until they protrude 2 millimeters from the bottom. Now that'll get adjusted further on a setup board, but this is our basic starting point. Okay. And then we need a pair of 3x8s. These are going to be our, I believe these are our shock mounts. And let's check our asphalt setup sheet. Okay, I'm sorry, I was just trying to see where they're gonna have us putting those. Looks like we're gonna use the top hole for those. And they need to stick out 3 millimeters. And what's recommended for this build is the graphite, which is what comes with the kit. You can see there's a little G down here on the bottom of the arm. We have L for left and G for graphite. I've also looked at several non-Xray professional drivers' critiques of this car, and one of the things they really like about the 2021 model is that it comes with a lot of what used to be option pieces. So that's a nice little bonus. Let me just record these for our new sheet here. Let's see. Okay, time to prep the front arms. We're going to be doing basically the same kind of stuff. I think the settings are going to be very similar too. Yep. A little bit longer in the on the droop screw side. 2.2 instead of 2 millimeters, and the same 3 millimeter for the shock. Okay, let's check to see how our movement is. And that's a little stiff. Okay. 3 millimeter reamer. See, this is when these tools come in really handy, because these little 10 scale touring cars are very much a precision machine. As I was saying, these little cars are extremely precise machines, and you really have to make sure that, you know, things move smoothly. If any stiction like that is just too much. So having a quality reamer like this, see, and there we have nice, smooth, like butter, no issues. Okay, I went ahead and used the reamer on all four arms in both the inner and outer. They are both the same size, 3 millimeters. These are a must-have tool for any builder. I'm a big fan of the Dynamite as the manufacturer. You can get these on Amazon for, I think they're around $14 or $15 per. And you probably want to get several. I basically bought them as I needed them in the various sizes. Now I have 2.5, 3 millimeter, 3.5, and 4 millimeter. And that pretty much covers the range of 1/12 through 8th scale cars. So let's see, we need M3x6s. We need 2, 4, 6 for the rear. 4 for the front. Okay, so let's see, they've got us looking at the rear first, so I'll go ahead and do it that way. That's right. And we need some spacers. Got 1 millimeter on either side. Okay. Okay, that's it. I'm going to go ahead and mount these pieces first. Same. They even mention arm reamers here. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please click like and please subscribe to my channel.